What's up, YouTube? My name is Weekly Xonin, and as the name suggests, I'm reviewing Xonin here. This week, we'll start out with the Platinum End reviews. Usually I do just One Piece content, and I'm gearing towards adding 2 more anime on the Sundays that I put out my reviews. But I also wanted to do something seasonal, and since Platinum End's coming out, I've been waiting for this to drop for months now. Maybe a year. I can't remember what time is anymore, but I've been waiting for this one to come out. And specifically this episode, because this was the chapter when I actually was reading the manga. I fell off completely, and once the anime was announced, I decided I wasn't going to continue reading the manga because I wanted to just see how the anime played out. But in terms of how far I got in the manga, full disclaimer, I got like 9 chapters in, so I won't be spoiling, obviously, but I just wanted to give that full disclaimer. The reason I wanted to wait till this episode of review is because this is the exchange that got me hooked in the manga. If I could compare this to anything, it would probably be Death Note episode 2, because it's just a series of chess moves that serve to showcase how dangerous the main antagonist is. And I don't just mean by power, because we'll get to like his wing count in a second, but I just mean by how calculated he is. I already plan on putting out another video on how many similarities there are between this, Bakuman, and Death Note, but that'll be once the season is over and, a full detailed analysis that I'm still working on. So look out for that. So the episode starts off where we last ended. 2 more guy candidates appear on the field as Metro Blue and Yellow, and they take a shot at the Metro Polyman on the pitcher's mound. What was thought to be him tanking their red arrow last episode was actually a confirmation that this isn't Metro Polyman himself. Their arrows can't pierce him because he's already being controlled by another red arrow, by the real Metro Polyman. And now that there's a moment to take a breather since the real threat is off the field, we get a chance to go over Blue and Yellow's backstory, which is nice because they're kind of like the co-stars of this episode, right? It turns out they were 2 struggling academics who were just on their way to commit suicide individually and decided to do it themselves. They helped motivate each other to push forward. And this confirms at the very least that Saki, was also on the verge of suicide, because that seems to be how all these candidates are chosen, right? At least 4 that we can confirm now. I don't know what Metro Polyman's deal is, but I'm guessing he was also on the verge of suicide. But how does everyone else go from suicidal to okay, we're gonna make the world a better place, whereas Metro Polyman goes from suicidal to genocidal? We get back to present day, and Blue is taking the opportunity to call out all possible moves Metro Polyman can take in the current situation. It seems Blue wasn't such a failure after all, since he took all this time to study the exact meter range of his red arrow and just understand his power. And Yellow was also probably there to back him up too. They're just 2 nerds, right? So I guess there's a bunch of testing on each other. Quick callback to Death Note here is the fact that Nase mentions she didn't also know about those arrows. She didn't know the range, and it just reminds me of whenever Ryuk is surprised by how people use the Death Note. There's a couple of times in Death Note where he's just like, oh wow, even I didn't know that. So this just goes to show. So yeah, after that little Death Note callback, we get a pretty elite setup from Metro Polyman. Before he even shows up on the field, he does 2 things. And first is call out a battle shonen trope. He's like, I'm not gonna go on the field. That's just gonna result in us trying to disappear behind each other, and that's boring. So clearly he's reading his manga. Second thing that Metro Polyman does is he implants a given into the heads of Blue and Yellow here. He reassures them that the Metro on the mound isn't dangerous since he's only a decoy, and they already surmised that last episode. But Blue being able to put him in a chokehold kind of solidifies this fact for them. He puts him up, and there's clearly no fight there. So, I don't know if you guys are aware of, the magician David Blaine, but I kind of equate this to his explanation of how he was able to steal a watch off the wrist of George Bush, our former president. And he basically explains that he had to play with Secret Service first. He had to get really rough with them, and not rough, but just hands-on beforehand, so that whenever he did touch President Bush, he wasn't tackled to the ground. And this is basically what Metro Polyman is doing here. See, it's all just set up for the perfect scenario for him, but Metro Man needs 1 more piece before he can carry out his plan, and that kind of falls right into place for him. 2-on-2, and then calling them idiots for letting that happen. But he's also secured the extra set of wings he needs to pull off his switch later on. Now, because they don't even check pink and green for any arrows. They just assume that anyone showing up in a costume has to be a candidate, right? Meanwhile, Metro pounces on the opportunity that he has here. He sees that they're turned around, and I went back and rewinded the clip just to see if, the animators were paying close attention here, and you can actually see the moment of the switch, which is really cool. I like little things like that, especially when they happen so fast, right? Because that's literally just a blink of an eye. If you're not paying attention to his placement on the mound, then you would just assume that he just stood up, right? Here's what I mean by implanting a given. Blue and yellow are looking at pink and green and giving their back to the Metro Polyman on the mound because they were told earlier and they confirmed themselves that this guy is a decoy and he's no one to be cautious about. When really, he's already been switched over. And this is when it all comes together. See, Metro gets rid of blue, takes control of yellow, and, gives him some much needed game about how human beings work. But, once again, I'm thankful for CGI here because, it makes pink and green's bowing look way creepier. Them showing their hand and just basically telling him how his powers work kind of proved to Metro Polyman their level in a way, because if they were special ranks, then they would know that they could fire off their arrows at 0.3 seconds rather than 2 seconds. So that's a pretty cool like little detail that I honestly didn't even notice until I started writing this review, until I started recording this actually. So pretty cool for him. But now we get to the demonstration, which, with the new wings and arrow acquired from blue, Metro takes the opportunity to go full Kira right now and conduct a bit of an experiment in front of the crowd. He shows us the limits of the red arrows and kills 2 birds with 1 stone because it also serves as a way to provoke any other god candidates, right? Like, hey, look, this little girl's in trouble. Are any of you going to come out and save her? Probably not because of how powerful I am now. But, in case you were thinking of it, this is your opportunity. And then hopefully, if it goes well enough for him, he can get rid of another god candidate, secure some more wings or another arrow. That's what I'm thinking he's trying to do here, other than just killing a little girl in front of anyone. And I saw in the comment section of Crunchyroll, people were just kind of like creeped out by the fact that the little girl was blushing and whatnot. And it's like, well, if this episode triggered you, then you might want to step the fuck away from the series because it's gonna get worse. That all I can remember from what I've read is that it's not gonna be any easier to look at the manipulation that goes into using a red arrow in this series. That's all I'll say. But yeah, with this demonstration, we get 2 instances of the rules being not broken, but loopholed, right? So the mid-episode card tells us that angels aren't allowed to use their wings or their arrows to affect god candidates. But we see 2 angels who clearly aren't fans of Metro interfere in other ways, or at least attempt to, right? You got the one angel who's trying to protect the little girl. She's not using her wings or her arrows, but, she's at least just trying to, plead for mercy here. And then you had the other angel that was connected to blue who, was just trying to sneak away with his arrow and wings. And she got caught, obviously, but that was another instance of her trying to interfere. So, next episode. Setup is pretty weird, right? Saki accidentally command seals Mirai into stepping in, but just before this, he lets us know he has no chance if he does step in here, which is kind of sad because that means Saki's kind of like doomed him in a way. Like, Mirai's already calculated, the all possible outcomes here, and he's just like, I can't win, but I guess I'm fighting now because I'm told to. Not only is Mirai hesitant on using the white arrow, but he's also outclassed here, and he realizes that. We got to break down last episode of the amount of candidates and their rankings and whatnot, or I think that was the episode before. Either way, this episode, combined with last, we can kind of put a count on how much power Metro Polyman has actually acquired. An set of wings, 1 white, 2 red. And after killing blue, he gets another set of wings and another red arrow. Same goes for yellow, another set of wings and another red arrow. Bringing his count to the total: 3 sets of wings, 4 red arrows, and 1 white arrow. So he only has 1 killing blow, but the 4 red arrows that he has are just as, serious, because if he hits you with a red arrow, you're out the game anyway. He can still kill you if he goes in for the double tap, but he can also control you. If he's controlling you, you've already lost, right? For 33 days at that. Another thing to remember, though, is that we also got a count of how many angels and how many ranked angels there are at play in here. We know that there are 13 angels. We know that 3 are special ranks, 5 are first ranks, and 5 are second ranks. Our 3 special ranks consist of 1 unknown person, Mirai and Metro Polyman. Our 5 first ranks, we have 2, That's blue and yellow, who were introduced this episode, or I guess last episode. And then we have 5 special ranks, and we got 3 of them so far, which is Saki, the unnamed girl who is currently about to be killed, and the rapist with the harem. So that means we have 1 more special rank out there. So that's 1 set of wings, 1 red and 1 white, and at least 3 sets of wings and red arrows from the first rank pool, and either 1 or 2 wings or red arrows, because we were told that they can only have one or the other, but we don't get confirmation on which one they have, right? And that's probably just to keep us from narrowing down the possible, outcomes, right? Unless the 3rd special rank person comes into play and they've already aired out the rest of the candidates, Metropolitan is probably the biggest threat here. Like, what we got from this episode is confirmation that if you have a red and a white arrow, your attacks get more powerful, because you don't have to wait 2 seconds to shoot. You can shoot in 0.3 seconds. So what happens if you have 1 white and 4 red arrows? Does that mean that you can still shoot 0.3, but you have to wait 2 seconds for the second red arrow to shoot it? Do you get faster if you have more wings? Like, I don't really know how that's gonna play out. All I know is that he can probably dish him out, right? He can probably give his wings to someone else too. It's not looking good for Mirai here. I feel bad for him, but he's a main character, so he's at least gonna get out of the situation. But the question is just how. And luckily, since I haven't gone back to read the manga, I don't remember how. I remember, the next god candidate appearing. I just don't remember how it happens and how they actually get out of the scenario. So, I'm just as, I'm just as confused here. I'm just as excited for the next episode as anyone else is, which I hope you all are, because it's great anime so far. Looks great. CGI has been on point for the most part. I haven't had any specific moments, but we definitely do have a situation on our hands, and maybe our first real battle of the series, because this is a battle shonen, right? Yeah, is this a battle shonen? I think it's a battle shonen. Either way, fun times. Looking forward to the next episode, and keep an eye out when the season ends, so that we can get this analysis going. I'm working on it now. There's a lot of Death Note that I do want to cover. Actually, fun fact: the first video I was going to put out on this channel was going to be a Death Note analysis, and things did not turn out that way because I readjusted my uploading process, and I'm also just dealing with tech stuff. But looking forward to continuing covering this anime, especially now going forward, because it's just going to get really, really interesting when the next character's introduced, and just to see how their moves have to be planned out and so calculated going forward, because they're not going to be able to dive in head first to a god candidate who's clearly at a supreme advantage here. Look forward to seeing how this all plays out, at least the first season, because I don't think I got far enough to call a whole season in terms of how far I got in the manga. I think maybe I'm halfway through this season, at best. I think it just depends on how quickly they adapt the anime, and I don't even want to go back to the manga to see what pace they're moving at right now. I think I'll only go back to the first chapter to get any relevant information, or the chapters as they are adapted. I'll promise at least to do that. I won't be reading ahead or trying to figure out exactly where I left off at. I'm just gonna let it rock. And if I really want to go back into the manga for a certain panel, because that's another thing that drew me to the series, is just how beautiful it looks, then I'll at least just do that. I'll keep myself to doing that only in chapters that are already adapted into the anime. And if there are any scenes, because I know Attack on Titan does this too, if there are any scenes that were left out that might be implemented later or might be adapted later, I'll point those out too. But I really do want to stray away from just heading back into the manga just until the season's over, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to read ahead just so I'm ready for next season, just as a personal thing. But up until then, I think we're good to go. All right, and that's all I really got for you today. Looking forward to the next chapter. Looking forward to the next anime. Looking forward to the next manga. Damn it. Looking forward to the next episode. It took me 3 tries just to say those 3 words. But yeah, that's all I got for today. My name is Weekly Shonen, and I hope you enjoy this review. Bye.
That's right. Go crazy, 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 crazy, no crazy, no crazy.